The dream begins with a wedding on a desolate island, where a beautiful woman named Yeonseul gazes at her new husband. He kisses her hand and declares them husband and wife, bringing tears of joy to her eyes as she reflects that fate brought them together just 7 days ago. They met on this island with nothing but the boundless sea before them. And now, after their vows, he leans in for a passionate kiss. The scene flashes to a rustic cabin where they are locked in an embrace on the floor, her heart pounding as she pants with desire. But the fantasy shatters in an instant. Yeonseul stands alone on the beach with her luggage, her face a mask of pure shock, as she screams internally that the ship actually left without her. This was supposed to be her escape, a reward for 3 years of corporate slavery. Blinded by the promise of a huge paycheck, Yeonseul had foolishly taken a job at a travel agency in a foreign country where she knew no one. Her boss had promised a paid vacation, but instead she was trapped by an exploitative contract. Worked around the clock for 3 long years while he partied and dumped endless work on her. Finally, she'd boarded a cruise ship, ready for her first and final vacation before returning home to Korea, determined to savor every moment. But her good fortune ran out when her phone died. A terrible memory resurfaces, her boss smirking, telling her he had an idea. Since the final tour of the season was booked, he offered to slip her in as part of the crew. The realization hits her like a physical blow. She wasn't on the passenger manifest, which means no one will even know she's missing. As she shudders with despair, she spots a body washed up on the sand. A surge of hope electrifies her. She's saved. She rushes to the unconscious man, taking in his handsome face and muscular physique. But her relief turns to panic when she sees how pale he is. Fearing he might be dead, pressing her ear to his chest, she hears a steady heartbeat and resolves to save him. Without hesitation, she leans down to perform CPR, giving him a life-saving kiss. But just as she pulls back, flustered, the man awakens. He sits up and coldly tells her to contact her people, accusingly asking if it was his diving partner or the captain she paid off to abandon him. Wiping his mouth with disdain, he remarks that crimes like this are common on secluded islands. Yeonseul, utterly confused, retorts that divers usually wear a dive watch to call for help. The man glances at his bare wrist, then suddenly yanks a strap from her bag, and before she can react, ties her wrist with it. She shouts in protest as he begins dragging her away from the beach. He ignores her pleas, a grim expression on his face, and pulls her deep into the woods until he finds a hidden trapdoor. He asks her a chilling question: when do spies finally talk? He answers his own question with a cold glare, stating it's when torture finally breaks their spirit. Yeonseul is horrified, realizing he intends to torture her, and she screams that she has no idea what's going on. Internally, she rages at the absolute nutjob, thinking it's no wonder someone wants him dead. But as she studies his arrogant expression and contemptuous gaze, a flicker of recognition sparks in her mind. She remembers seeing his face on a magazine cover, Taeju Jang, the powerful crown prince of NS Electronics. She asks if he is truly him, and a slow, cruel smirk spreads across his lips. He looms over her, confirming his identity and mockingly asking if she's finally decided to remember who he is, leaving Yeonseul frozen in terror. On the lonely, hostile island, the man she saved is Taeju Jang, a man whose life is a constant battle against stress and unseen enemies. His own doctor had warned him that chronic tension was destroying his body, causing hyperventilation spells and pushing him to the brink of death. Scuba diving was his only sanctuary, a tranquil sea that gave him the strength to face the demons that haunted him. But even in the ocean's depth, his enemies found him, and a shadowy attacker sent him plunging into the abyss. Back in the present, Yeonseul's shocked recognition only fuels his paranoia. He sneers that her act is just a ploy for her employers. As she babbles about how impossible his presence is, he coldly asks if she's done skipping formalities and continues dragging her toward the supposed torture chamber. She struggles wildly, screaming that she refuses to be tortured. But when he throws open the trapdoor, she's met not with a dungeon, but a pantry overflowing with food. At that exact moment, her stomach betrays her with a loud growl. Taeju smirks, noting that her body doesn't lie, and tempts her with a piece of beef jerky. Overcome by hunger, Yeonseul's pride vanishes, and she practically begs for the food like a starving puppy. Taeju's eyes glint with cruel amusement as he asks if she's willing to do anything he asks. Thus begins her new life as his personal slave, forced to dig for days on end under the hot sun. He lords over her, declaring that those who do not work shall not eat, dangling food just out of her reach until her daily tasks are complete. That night, she finally gets a chance to explain herself, pouring out the story of her family's financial troubles and the exploitative job that brought her here. She confesses that she'd been deathly ill recently, unable to even afford a hospital. But as she pleads her case, she realizes with fury that Taeju has completely ignored her and fallen asleep. Fed up, Yeonseul seizes her chance to escape. Tiptoeing away from the sleeping CEO, she makes a beeline for the pantry, determined to raid it for every last delicacy. But as she gleefully gathers supplies, she feels a cold sensation on her leg and looks down to find a small white snake wrapped around her ankle. Her terrified scream awakens Taeju, who finds the pantry door open. He marches in, shirtless and furious, ready to accuse her of theft, but she collapses in a dead faint before he can finish his sentence. Rushing to her side, he discovers the snake bite on her upper thigh. Cursing the inconvenient location, he knows he has to act fast. Resigned to his fate, he lifts her leg and presses his mouth to the wound, sucking out the venom. After spitting it out, he cleanses his mouth with liquor from a nearby bottle. Just then, Yeonseul shivers and murmurs that she's cold. But when he touches her, he finds her body is burning with a raging fever. He finds her cheap medicine in her bag, but as he prepares to give it to her, a chilling realization dawns on him. He used the liquor to rinse his mouth, and now the poison is coursing through his own veins. Fighting the encroaching coldness, he tries to force the pill into her mouth. But she won't swallow. In a final, desperate act, he puts the pill in his own mouth and kisses her deeply, transferring the medicine as they both lie tangled together, consumed by fever. Yeonseul drifts in a fever dream, transported back to a time when her family's finances were a constant source of stress. The memory is vivid, her younger brother Yeonuk rushing to her with his piggy bank, insisting she take his allowance. He promises that when he's older, he'll make tons of money and buy her everything in the world. Overwhelmed by his love, she hugs him tightly, her heart aching. As she blinks back to consciousness, the face above her isn't her brother's but Taeju's. Delirious, she calls out for Yeonuk, then recoils, disgustedly telling Taeju she doesn't want to see his face. She concludes this must be hell if he's here. Annoyed, Taeju lightly slaps her cheeks to snap her out of it, gruffly asking if she knows how much trouble he went through for her. Instead of gratitude, Yeonseul dissolves into tears, wailing that she would have preferred dying of starvation to being saved by him, despairing that she'll never see her brother again. Seeing her so distraught, Taeju's annoyance softens and he simply asks if she wants something to eat. Her mood flips instantly. Later they sit on the beach, a temporary truce declared over a shared meal. But the peace is fragile as Yeonseul spirals into despair, wondering if they'll ever be rescued or if she'll just disappear, forgotten. She voices her fears, listing all the mundane things she'll miss, like hanging out with friends and maybe even getting married. Taeju listens, still convinced she's a spy abandoned by her co-conspirators, but her genuine despair makes him question who would send such an amateur. Deciding to humor her, he suggests they check some things off her bucket list right now, since they might die on the island anyway. He then reveals that he tried to send a distress signal before washing ashore, but lost his watch and has no idea if it was received. Struck by a sudden, reckless idea, Yeonseul decides that if this is the end, she's going out with a bang. She declares that they should get married since he has the perfect face for it. Before he can object, she's all in, announcing they will scratch marriage off her list first. Taeju surprisingly plays along, insisting they do it right. He officiates their makeshift wedding, asking for the bride's name. Throwing caution to the wind, Yeonseul gives the name of a famous actress she admires, Jihyun, figuring if she's going to die, she might as well go by a badass name. When he asks if Taeju takes Jihyun to be his lawfully wedded wife, he coolly agrees and declares them husband and wife. He asks her if she has any second thoughts, but her mind is on the next item, dating. When he cluelessly asks what dating entails, she launches into a description based on TV shows. He dryly points out that all he's done is follow her around and count how many pits she's dug. Horrified at his unromantic interpretation, she grabs his face to show him what dating is really about and gives him a soft kiss. Giddy and slightly drunk, she giggles that this is also part of dating, but she falters. Wobbling on her feet, Taeju catches her, his heart pounding in the sudden proximity. He decides that what comes next is obvious and pulls her into a deep, passionate kiss. A kiss so intense it feels like he's devouring her whole. As he lifts her into his arms on the moonlit beach, Taeju's question hangs in the air, his gaze intense as he asks what comes next. Flustered, Yeonseul pushes him away, her mind racing. She promised herself she would make the most of her remaining time, and dying without experiencing physical intimacy feels like an unacceptable injustice. Besides, she admits to herself that despite his grumbling, Taeju is surprisingly gentle, and most importantly, kissing him felt really good. Stealing her resolve, she shyly suggests they continue. Taeju, who was internally panicking about his forwardness, is taken aback by her boldness. He clenches his fist and sweeps her off her feet, throwing her onto a makeshift bed on the sand. He asks if she's sure, warning her there's no going back. With a determined smile, she says yes. He wonders if she truly likes him or if the threat of death is making her reckless, but either way, he can't hold back any longer. As their kisses deepen, he pauses, his hands hovering over her body. Her flushed, expectant face makes him blush furiously, wondering why she is so provocative. Unable to resist, he grabs her and carries her inside the shelter. The scene shifts to Tiju's past, a life lived under the constant flash of cameras. As the firstborn son of one of the world's wealthiest families, he was a target from a young age. His father's harsh words echo in his memory, a constant reminder to stay vigilant and trust no one to protect those he loves. This upbringing taught him to be wary of everyone, especially those who professed to like him, as they always had an agenda. But Yeonseul is different. He can't remember the last time he saw a smile as genuine and pure as hers. And he finds himself wanting to believe she isn't like the others. Back in the present, he tells her not to feel pressured to go all the way, but she simply agrees with a soft okay, her eyes full of trust. As he begins to explore her body, she quivers, murmuring that it feels strange. He reassures her it just means she's enjoying it, which makes her gasp in embarrassment. He teases her for enjoying her first time so much, and she retorts that it's only because he's so good at it. Caught off guard, Tiju blurts out that he's never been married, so of course it's his first time too. The revelation stuns them both into silence, as Yeonseul realizes that this incredible, world-weary man is just as inexperienced as she is. After a moment of charged silence, Tiju blushingly agrees to their arrangement, and the woman is hit with the sudden comical realization that his confident, seasoned act was nothing but smoke and mirrors. He smirks, teasing that her reaction just means she's enjoying herself, but she finds a strange comfort in knowing this experience was a first for both of them. Tiju explains his inexperience by claiming that running Korea's largest conglomerate left him far too busy to indulge in things like relationships. His casual dismissal of her own struggles ignites a spark of defiance in her, and she retorts that she's been busy too, just trying to make ends meet. A wave of painful memories washes over her as she recalls a life where choice was a luxury she never had. Flashbacks reveal a grim past where her own mother would steal her hard-earned savings, leaving only a brief, unapologetic note behind, forcing her to take on grueling labor jobs to put her younger brother, Yeonuk, through school. Taking even a single day off from her promotional work was an impossible dream. Snapping back to the present, a fierce determination hardens her gaze. This is precisely why she is here now with him, to finally live for herself. Her resolve is momentarily shaken as she's once again struck by how handsome he is, thinking he'd be perfect if not for his sharp tongue. Still, she pushes, asking if someone with his face truly never had opportunities, even without a formal relationship. Tiju's response floors her when he asks with unnerving sincerity why he would ever be with someone he had no feelings for. The implication hits her like a physical blow, her heart hammering in her chest as she realizes he must have feelings for her. Tiju, misreading her stunned silence, leans in and whispers that she must have thoroughly enjoyed herself earlier, which sends a fresh wave of embarrassment crashing over her. He finds her blushing amusing, but she can only stammer that she's flustered now that it's over. He gently tells her there's no point in hiding her face, and pulls her close, whispering for her to tell him if he gets too rough. The world melts away as they kiss again, but her gasp of surprise makes him ask if she's in pain. Shaking her head, she admits this isn't what she was expecting, and he simply tells her to breathe, holding her tightly, as they lose themselves in each other through the night. Sometime later, she wakes with a groan, dreaming she's on a crowded subway and muttering for someone to stop pushing her. A sudden springy jolt reveals she's actually zipped up in a sleeping bag, with a sheepish-looking Tiju beside her admitting he just wanted to hold her. The full memory of the previous night floods her mind, and she screams internally, realizing they are completely naked together under the blanket. She instinctively yanks the sleeping bag away, but he pulls her right back into his arms. As he gazes down at her, he murmurs that she's so pretty first thing in the morning, leaving her utterly speechless. The morning sun shines brightly into the room, and she points out that it's late, but Tiju counters that it doesn't matter since they don't have work. He then takes her hand, squeezing it meaningfully, a silent promise that for them, the day is just getting started. Their newfound domesticity on the island blossoms as the woman proudly shows off her successful spearfishing attempt, earning an amused thumbs up from Tiju, which makes her radiate with happiness. However, the idyllic survival fantasy is shattered by the crushing reality that they might remain trapped on the desolate island forever. While they eat their meal, the weight of their situation crashes down on her, and she begins to despair, questioning if anyone will ever find them. Tiju's expression hardens as he begins to speak of a future where they might be rescued by some miracle. But she immediately retreats into her insecurities, remembering the vast social chasm that separates them. She preemptively tells him that upon their return, she will swear never to speak of what happened and will act as if she's never met President Tiju Jang. Her sudden declaration leaves him frowning and confused, but she presses on, yelling that in any other circumstance, she would never even dream of dating someone like him, and reminding him that she saved his life too. Her outburst is abruptly cut short when Taeju spots something in the distance, quickly extinguishing their fire with a kick of sand. Before grabbing her and silencing her with his hand, he drags her behind a tree, urgently whispering that the newcomers on the yacht could be there to kill them. Despite the danger, the sight of the boat fills her with a desperate hope, a chance to escape and see her brother Yeonuk again. Ignoring his warnings, she makes a mad dash for the shore, only for Taeju to yank her back. With a grim smirk, he reminds her that her recklessness is what got her stranded in the first place and tells her to follow his lead, darkly suggesting she might serve as his leverage. He pulls her toward a hidden trapdoor in the forest floor and leads her down into a cramped cellar below. He pulls her into his arms, demanding absolute silence, but a rustling sound sends her into a panic about snakes. Just as he quiets her, another noise puts them on edge. And seconds later, the trapdoor slams shut, plunging them into darkness. A cold voice from above asks if Taeju has finally found peace, causing her to tremble in fear. Taeju's face twists in horrified recognition as a man outside begins to sob his name into the quiet jungle air. A heartbroken man named Minhyun sobs hysterically over the loss of his friend, Taeju, lamenting that he always imagined they would be together in this place. But now he is utterly alone. Elsewhere, a young woman is startled when a hand taps her shoulder, and she turns in terror to find a man looming over her, demanding to know who she is. The man explains he is the son of her aunt, clarifying for her that they are cousins. Back in the woods, Minhyun continues to weep, begging the spirit of his friend not to leave him behind. When suddenly a wooden hatch pops open with a loud crack. Minhyun screams, convinced he's seeing a ghost, and pleads for his life, insisting he's not ready to depart this world. A figure appears over the edge of the opening and calls his name, but Minhyun is too lost in his panic, rambling that he still needs to uncover the truth behind his cousin's death, prompting the man to climb out and calmly state that he is not dead. The man, revealing himself to be Taeju, points out that the dead don't cast shadows. And as recognition dawns, Minhyun cries out his name in disbelief. Overcome with joy, Minhyun leaps forward and grabs Taeju in a tight hug, exclaiming that he knew a man like him wouldn't kick the bucket so easily. Taeju pulls back, scanning the area and asking if Minhyun is alone, to which Minhyun confirms that the islands are closed off but that he pulled some strings to sneak in on his yacht. Taeju sternly says they need to head to the yacht to talk. But as they start to leave, Minhyun nervously points out the woman watching them from a distance. Taeju awkwardly shuffles to block his friend's view as the woman offers a polite greeting, leading Minhyun to whisper and ask if she's a local Taeju hired. Minhyun sighs dramatically, muttering that it's just like Taeju to be stranded with a woman for 2 months with nothing happening between them. Unaware that his words trigger a sensual memory for the woman, she recalls telling Minhyun she ended up deserted on the island with President Jang by pure chance, a statement that makes Taeju scoff derisively. Aboard the yacht, the woman celebrates her newfound freedom, while Taeju questions Minhyun, who confirms that everyone back in Korea believes him to be dead. Minhyun explains that a corpse, believed to be Taeju's and dressed in his diving gear, was discovered off the West Seacoast, and that a forensic autopsy confirmed the identity. Minhyun concludes that Taeju's miraculous return proves the body was a fake, wondering if their enemies were so confident he was gone that they went to the trouble of preparing a stand-in. Taeju's expression darkens as he grits his teeth, admitting it's understandable since someone was dead set on killing him. He reveals that the dive guide struck him over the head with an oxygen tank and left him to drown in the sea, so after 2 months of silence, his enemies naturally assumed he was dead. Minhyun adds another chilling detail. After the last ferry departed, the entire area was locked down, with not a single ship entering for 2 months, making it seem like someone was intentionally keeping the island isolated. This information makes Taeju reconsider the woman's story, realizing she might have been telling the truth all along. A smirk forms on his lips as he declares that this settles it. If they want answers, they must venture into the lion's den, instructing Minhyun that they will have to sneak back into the country by boat. The woman interrupts them, and completely misreading the situation, approaches Taeju to deliver a formal farewell. She bows deeply, wishing him the best in his future endeavors and thanking him for everything. Taeju lets out a short, disbelieving laugh, which then erupts into full-blown hysterics at the sheer absurdity of her speech. As Minhyun offers her a small object, the woman thanks him. But before she can take it, Taeju grabs her wrist firmly, informing her with cold finality that she won't be boarding any flights. Taeju coldly repeats that she is not boarding any flights, causing Jihyun to stare back in disbelief. Internally, she seethes with rage, recalling how he's been glaring at her and treating her like she's invisible when all she wants is to hurry back and see Yeonuk. Taeju is stunned when she shoves his hand away, and as Min-hyun watches nervously, Ji-hyun explodes, roaring at Taeju and demanding to know who he thinks he is to order her around. Her rant is cut short by her ringing phone, and as she turns away, Min-hyun asks Taeju why he was bossing her around if she wasn't an employee, a claim Taeju dismisses by saying his requests were perfectly reasonable. Looking at her phone, Ji-hyun sees messages from her friend who assumes she's been off with a man, and she feels a pang of anger, wondering why no one bothered to look for her. Her mood sours further when Min-hyun informs her they'll be stopping at Aonang port to refuel, and then warns her not to even think about running, adding that she'll need to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Ji-hyun looks utterly haggard at the mention of an NDA. But as Min-hyun tries to explain the paperwork, Taeju cuts him off, telling him that's enough and ordering Ji-hyun to call her colleague immediately. Upon arriving at the port, Taeju sarcastically comments on how nice it is that her coworker is there to meet her, but Ji-hyun just snaps back, asking if he thinks everyone is like him. She walks down the pier, fuming that the jerk isn't even bothering to give her his usual grief, thinking that if he truly wanted her to come back, he would have at least sent Min-hyun with her. She pauses, hurt and confused, wondering why she's suddenly not even worth hush money or an NDA anymore. When she looks back, Taeju simply tells her to go now. Her eyes fill with tears as she realizes this is truly the end for them, and she runs away. After she's gone, Taeju instructs Min-hyun to untie the yacht, explaining they're leaving immediately. Min-hyun panics, arguing that Ji-hyun needs to be with them in case word gets out that Taeju is alive, but Taeju calmly states that traveling as a trio would only slow them down, leaving his friend baffled and worried. Later in the city, Ji-hyun meets her friend Yeonseul, who asks if her earlier tears were really from joy. Yeonseul then asks if Ji-hyun will get back with him, but Ji-hyun just sighs, saying they both have separate circumstances to deal with. She laments that sometimes you have to wake up from the fairy tale, as she isn't in a position to live as she pleases. Resigned, she decides it's time to close this chapter of her life, and sends a text to a man named Yeonuk telling him she's flying back tonight. She then notices her severance pay hasn't been deposited, but decides to put it out of her mind, focusing only on getting home. Finally arriving, she is greeted by a frantic Yeonuk who asks where she's been. Ji-hyun happily suggests they go home so she can cook for him, but he stops her, scratching his neck nervously as he delivers a devastating blow. They don't have a home anymore. Ji-hyun can only stare in stunned silence, her world crumbling around her. The world crashes down around Yeonseul when her companion grimly informs her that they no longer have a home. She reels in disbelief, roaring at him to explain what he means, but he can only sigh wearily before revealing the whole sordid tale. A flashback shows the moment he returned from military service, only to find two strangers in his home. They calmly explained that the house had been foreclosed on, a revelation that left him utterly stunned. Back in the present, he tells Yeonseul that a loan was taken out using the house as collateral. With a sinking feeling, she asks if her mother was behind it, a suspicion he confirms by admitting he gave her mother the money he had been saving for Yeonseul, believing she would have approved. The final nail in her coffin comes when she asks where he has been staying, and he replies that he's been couch surfing and sleeping at bathhouses, forcing her to the horrifying realization that she too is now completely homeless. Her life spirals into a miserable existence at a public bathhouse, where she laments the universe's cruelty. Desperate for work, she's been sending out applications, but no companies are getting back to her until a sudden notification dings on her phone. The pay is so generous that she's immediately suspicious, wondering if the company is even legitimate. As she decides to ask her friend Yeonuk to look into it, she overhears other women gossiping about the shocking death of Taeju Jang from NS Group. Her blood runs cold as she turns to see the news on a nearby screen, confirming that President Taeju Jang has been declared deceased. The report sends her spiraling as she denies the possibility, her hands trembling over her phone. News headlines flash across her mind, speculating about a tragic fall a month ago, triggering a memory of when she and Taeju were still together on his yacht. A wave of regret washes over her. If she had just stayed with him, she wouldn't be in this desperate, anxious state. Just then, her phone rings. It's the company, calling to schedule an interview for that very afternoon. Stealing her resolve, she decides to tackle one problem at a time. First the interview, then uncovering the truth about Taeju. She arrives at the address, a luxurious building that looks more like a private residence than an office. She rings the bell and announces herself, and when the door buzzes open, she hears a man's voice over the intercom that strikes her as eerily familiar. As she walks inside, she sees a man with his back to her and bows politely. But when he turns around, her world stops. It's Taeju Jang, alive and well, a smirk playing on his lips as he asks if he should call her Yeonseul instead. Stunned into silence, Yeonseul can only stare, her mind struggling to accept that Taeju is truly standing before her. The disbelief melts into overwhelming relief, and tears stream down her face as she whispers her thanks that he is safe. But the warmth is not returned. Tiju's face is a thunderous mask of fury, making her wonder why he looks like he's about to bite her head off. A jolt of fear sends her scrambling for the exit, but Tiju's sharp voice stops her cold, demanding to know why she lied about her name. She stammers an apology, explaining that she never imagined they would cross paths again and had no malicious intent. His gaze remains icy as he declares he can't just let her walk away. Just then, another man appears, introducing himself as Min-hyun, the one she spoke with to arrange the interview. Yeonseul internally curses her foolishness for not connecting the similar-sounding names. Ignoring her attempts to back out of the job, Tiju coldly instructs Min-hyun to prepare a contract, ensuring it includes a stringent confidentiality clause. In that moment, everything clicks into place for Yeonseul. She understands now. She's the perfect pawn because she knows the man who is supposed to be dead is alive, and as the insignificant woman he was married to for a mere 2 months, she's the ideal candidate to keep his secrets. Min-hyun cheerfully leads her inside to discuss the contract, confirming she's aware of Tiju's situation. He hands her a thick document that is essentially a non-disclosure agreement, threatening legal action if she leaks anything. He then leans in, cryptically explaining that they are involved in a dangerous business and ominously adds that if she can't help, they'll have to place her somewhere secure for her own safety. A thinly veiled threat she immediately understands. Her duties, he explains, will be simple housekeeping around the clock, 7 days a week. Yeonseul's resolve wavers until he reveals the pay, 7 million won a month. The number echoes in her mind and visions of cash wash away her fear. She quickly calculates that with overtime, she can save enough for a deposit on an apartment for her and Yeonuk. With newfound determination, she snatches the pen from Min-hyun and signs the contract, vowing to work like a dog for 1 year before escaping this mess. A flashback reveals her hiring was no coincidence. Min-hyun had been actively tracking her since she left Aonang, deeming her too risky to let go, and conveniently found her resume on a job site. Back in the present, Tiju directs Yeonseul to her new room, a space larger than any house she's ever lived in. As Yeonseul Ki, part-timer extraordinaire, she throws herself into her work with gusto, but the sheer size of the 6-story mansion quickly drains her, leaving her panting and exhausted. As she moves to her next task, she's startled to find Tiju standing right behind her, clad only in a bathrobe. Before she can react, he reaches out, his hand sliding under her shirt to press against her bare skin, his touch sending a jolt through her body as her heart hammers against her ribs. Frozen in place, Yeonseul wonders what on earth Tiju thinks he's doing. He pulls out her earbud and murmurs that she's lost weight. The observation catches her off guard and she stammers that perhaps he's right. Tiju simply sighs and turns away, leaving her to grumble under her breath about his strange behavior. But he stops and asks about her ultimate Usher room shirt, forcing her to clamp her mouth shut to stifle a retort. She explains it's her work uniform, and he snidely remarks that it's suited for cleaning. Annoyed, she tries to ignore him, reminding herself not to get distracted by his handsome face because they are from 2 different worlds. The next morning, as she's making breakfast, Min-hyun wanders in, delighted by the smell of her soybean paste stew. While they chat, Tiju enters, his gaze immediately darkening as he sees them together. Min-hyun cheerfully praises Yeonseul's cooking, certain Tiju already knew how skilled she was, but Tiju's response is laced with venom. He states that despite spending 2 months with her, he had no idea she could cook, his glare making her flinch. The comment triggers a memory of their time on the island, where he did all the cooking and was so incredibly sweet to her. Min-hyun invites her to join them, but Tiju cuts him off, coldly ordering her to start dusting the ceilings if she's ready to work. Dejected, Yeonseul heads upstairs to start her task. Min-hyun confronts Tiju about his harshness, but Tiju brushes him off, his mind consumed with jealousy. He fumes internally, wondering why she chats so easily with Min-hyun but won't even eat in front of him, looking so fragile a breeze could knock her over. Later, he finds her dusting and points out a spot she missed, watching her with a critical eye. To reach a high spot on the ceiling, she precariously balances on a stool, stretching to her limit. Suddenly, the stool wobbles and she loses her balance, crying out as she falls backward. Tiju lunges forward, catching her just in time and scolding her for being so reckless. Overwhelmed, Yeonseul breaks down, sobbing that she knows he can't stand her, but his constant cruelty is killing her inside. Her tears catch him by surprise. He tells her to wait and returns with a packet of beef jerky, the same kind he gave her on the island. As he wipes her tears, he apologizes, explaining that he only cared about the jerky because they were stuck on that island. His words hang in the air, and he asks if she only cared about him for the same reason. She pauses, then quietly admits that wasn't the case. In that moment of vulnerability, he closes the distance between them, capturing her lips in a deep, passionate kiss. The air crackles with tension as Taeju leans in, silencing Yeonseul with a sudden, forceful kiss. As the kiss deepens, his hands begin to wander, one sliding up her back with an insistent pressure. Yeonseul's breath hitches when his fingers slip beneath her shirt, the cold touch on her bare skin sending a jolt through her entire body. She gasps, her eyes flying open in surprise at his boldness. Just as quickly as it began, Taeju pulls back, a flicker of regret on his face as he mutters an apology. Yeonseul stares at him, her heart thundering in her chest as she processes what just happened. Turning away, she collects herself, thinking that even if she still has feelings for him, it's none of his concern anymore. Taeju's expression hardens as he coldly agrees that her feelings don't concern him. Fed up with his mixed signals, Yeonseul confronts him, pointing out his obvious contempt for her since their reunion and questioning if it was because he'd hoped to never see her again after they parted at the port. For a moment, Taeju is flustered, starting to explain that the circumstances weren't what she thought. But his words are cut short by a voice calling his name from outside the room. They both freeze, their intimate confrontation shattered by the sudden intrusion. As footsteps approach, Yeonseul panics and dives for cover just as another man enters holding a file for Taeju to review. The man gives a knowing smile, seemingly aware of the situation. While Yeonseul breaks out in a cold sweat in her hiding spot, her heart pounding with the fear of being discovered. The close call was too much. She feels like she nearly had a heart attack and decides she needs to escape. But as she tries to sneak away, Taeju calls her name, stopping her in her tracks. He calmly asks her to go clean the guest room on the 4th floor, an order that leaves her confused. His friend playfully pats him, remarking on how nice he's being for a change, but Taeju simply tells him to be quiet. From the doorway, Yeonseul watches them, a sliver of hope emerging as she wonders if he might genuinely be sorry for his behavior. She proceeds to the guest room and begins cleaning, only to find Taeju leaning against the door frame, watching her every move. Annoyed, she demands to know why he's making her clean it again, and he coolly replies that they need to finish what they started earlier. He finally reveals the truth, explaining that his coldness was a front because their journey back to Korea was dangerous, and he feared for her safety. Considering he could be attacked at any time, he believed letting her go was the only way to protect her. Yeonseul is stunned into silence by his confession. Taeju lets out a heavy sigh and collapses onto the bed, adding that he couldn't have found her anyway since he never even knew her name. Chapter 13, pulling her down onto the bed beneath him. Her heart hammers against her ribs as he gazes down at her, his eyes dark with an emotion she can't quite read. He smirks, revealing that the 4th floor is his private domain, a fact she was completely unaware of. The realization hits her hard, as he shifts, pulling her fully into his embrace. A breathless sigh escapes her lips as the last of her resistance melts away. He looks at her with raw desire, murmuring how incredible she is. And her mind goes blank. She can't believe this is all it took to get him this worked up. He leans in close, his voice a low growl as he declares he now has a reason to keep her on the 4th floor all day. Yeonseul can only try to process the intensity in his eyes, but a laugh bubbles up and she playfully tells him there's no need to go that far. He seems momentarily taken aback by her laughter, but the tension quickly dissolves back into passion as he leans in again. He asks if she's all right, acknowledging that this is their first time together away from the island. And she responds by cupping his face and pulling him into a deep, consuming kiss. The next morning, however, the passion has been replaced by sheer exhaustion. Yeonseul can barely stand as she makes breakfast, her entire body trembling and shaking from their night together. Slumping against the counter, she groans that she must have been out of her mind, trying to force herself to pull it together. When Minhyun arrives for breakfast, he's shocked by her haggard appearance. Just as she's trying to brush off his concern, Taeju appears behind her, and she nearly jumps out of her skin, stammering denials before fleeing the room in a panic, leaving both men utterly bewildered. Later, while she's cleaning, Taeju watches her from his desk, his gaze drawn to the stretched collar of her shirt. He internally fumes, thinking she's being far too provocative walking around like that in broad daylight. Confused by her sudden avoidance, he begins to overthink everything, wondering if he did something wrong or, even more absurdly, if his performance was unsatisfactory. His thoughts are interrupted when Minhyun calls Yeonseul over and gives her a tedious task of cross-referencing IP addresses. Taeju immediately begins to glare, his mood turning sour. Yeonseul is baffled by his sudden coldness, a complete reversal from the previous night. He stands up, snatches the papers from her, and dismisses her before turning on Minhyun, berating him for giving her such a pointless task. Later, while talking to a friend on the phone, Yeonseul despairs over how to approach a man who acts so indifferent the day after they were intimate. Meanwhile, Minhyun intercepts a package for Taeju and discovers a woman's tracksuit inside. He immediately confronts Taeju, shaking the box and demanding to know if it's for Yeonseul. Cornered, Taeju looks flustered as Minhyun presses further, asking point-blank what happened between them on that island. Taeju's friend confronts him, demanding honesty about his sudden change in behavior. He cuts straight to the point, asking if something happened between Taeju and Yeonseul on the island. The question hits Taeju like a physical blow, and he struggles to keep his composure, his heart pounding in his chest as he tells himself to stay calm. He tries to deflect, suggesting that being stranded was eventful enough, but his friend isn't buying it. He insists that Taeju's treatment of Yeonseul is just too odd, jumping to the most dramatic conclusion possible. She must have dirt on him. Taeju is left utterly baffled by the absurd accusation. His friend continues his rant, questioning why Taeju would torment her one moment and then act nice the next, even buying her clothes, something the usually indifferent Taeju would never do for anyone. He speculates that being a sheltered rich boy, Taeju was likely taken advantage of on the deserted island. Just as the friend's imagination runs wild, Yeonseul herself appears, having heard her name being mentioned. In a desperate bid to shut down the conversation, Taeju shoves a box into her hands, curtly stating he bought her clothes because her ultimate Asha room shirt was an eyesore. This gesture, meant to silence his friend, only ignites Yeonseul's fury. She protests that her bathhouse clothes are perfectly fine, demanding to know what this has to do with his friend's bizarre claim that she was blackmailing him. Seeing their petty argument, the friend finally realizes how completely off the mark he was. He waves his hands apologetically, admitting he misjudged the situation entirely, explaining that Taeju was just acting so differently from his usual indifferent self that he got the wrong idea. Later, Yeonseul accepts the package, but coolly informs Taeju that it's her choice whether she wears the clothes or not. The dynamic shifts when the friend asks for her help with some Excel formulas. She sits down and expertly navigates the spreadsheet, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Her skill leaves the friend thoroughly impressed, proclaiming she's as good as any manager at their company. She laughs it off, saying she's nothing special and that her skills just come from working many temp jobs. Her words trigger a memory for Taeju, taking him back to their time on the island. He recalls her sitting by the fire, confessing that she had to raise her younger brother alone and never had the chance to build a proper career, wistfully wondering if she could have worked at a company like his. The memory lingers in his mind as he watches her. Later, Yeonseul finds a paper bag hanging on her doorknob. Inside, she discovers a certification exam workbook and a bottle of vitamins. A wave of realization hits her as she connects the gift to their conversation on the island. Flustered by his unexpected kindness, she goes to thank him but finds his room empty. Her search leads her to the bathroom, which she opens just as he steps out, clad only in a towel. Mortified, she yelps and stumbles, grabbing onto his leg to steady herself, which only succeeds in giving him a painful cramp. As she rubs his throbbing muscle, she awkwardly explains she just wanted to thank him for the gift. He remains silent, enduring the strange situation while she finds herself distracted, thinking his body looks particularly sinful today. He suddenly glances down at her, their eyes locking for a tense moment. He then gently grabs her hand, pulling it away from his leg as he tells her she can stop now. As Yeonseul continues to hold his hand, a blush creeps up Taeju's face. She asks if his leg is better, but he curtly tells her it's fine and that she should leave. Confused by his odd behavior, she exits the bathroom, completely unaware of the effect she has on him. Later that night, Yeonseul finds herself unable to sleep, her mind replaying the day's events. She puzzles over his friend's comment about Taeju being indifferent, thinking that while he may seem prickly, he can be incredibly sweet once he warms up to someone. Memories of their time on the island flood her thoughts, his desperation to find her, their kiss, and the quiet moments they shared. A smile graces her lips as she realizes she's one of the few who gets to see his softer side, and she giggles to herself before finally drifting off to sleep. However, her sleep is interrupted by a soft voice calling her name. In her dreamlike state, she gets out of bed and follows the sound, finding herself on a beautiful, starlit beach. There she sees Taeju, lounging with an alluringly wicked expression, beckoning her to come closer. As she approaches, he pulls her into a passionate kiss, his hands exploring her body. He suddenly pulls back, laughing at her shocked expression and calling her adorable before leaning in again. Just as their lips are about to meet a second time, a jarring realization hits her. The sound of chirping birds pulls her from the dream, and she wakes up, horrified at how vividly she was fantasizing about him. Her mortification is cut short by her phone vibrating on the nightstand. It's a call from her younger brother, Yeoni, who happily informs her that he's found a remote part-time job and moved into a boarding house so she doesn't have to worry about him. She promises not to overwork herself and they end the call, but a flicker of unease remains as she stares at his high-tech computer setup in the background. A man known only as Mr. J slams a file down on his desk, the sound of the flop echoing his confusion. He's on the phone, his expression a mixture of irritation and suspicion as he confirms he's reviewed the requested task. He questions the client, pointing out that they should already have access to the NS Group's internal servers. The man on the other end, Taeju, simply smiles, clarifying that they need access to servers reserved for the owner's family. The realization hits Mr. J like a ton of bricks. This wasn't the run-of-the-mill hacking gig he'd signed up for, and the ridiculously high pay suddenly made terrifying sense. A wave of chills runs down his spine as he thinks about his own professor, Professor Park, who had cheerfully offered him this high-paying part-time job, effectively throwing his student into the lion's den. Taeju calmly states that as long as he's particular about the results, money won't be an issue. Mr. J, sweating, nervously agrees that it won't be a problem, trying to mask his panic as the client wishes him well. In another location, Taeju ends the call and throws up a peace sign, celebrating the successful recruitment of his new rookie white hat hacker. His associate, a stern man with glasses, asks how the call went, and Taeju explains that the hacker was curious about what more he could do. The associate is unimpressed, coldly stating that if the hacker can't get higher clearance within a week, he's to be fired. Taeju sighs dramatically that he's dead, complaining about how his own access was revoked so quickly. His associate clarifies that the clearance they were using belonged to Secretary Im, Chairman Jang's chief secretary, so bypassing it shouldn't be impossible. A notification dings on a phone, and the associate reads a message aloud. The chairman has requested his caregiver be replaced by a trustworthy outsider, and Secretary Im hopes the young master can recommend someone. Taeju immediately asks if this means internal staff pose a threat to his uncle, and the associate confirms his father wouldn't be anxious for no reason. Now stressed, Taeju wonders where he's supposed to find a caregiver on such short notice. The associate mutters that it's best if Secretary Im remains unaware of Yeonseul's survival, reasoning that if she goes undercover as the caretaker, they can monitor his father's condition directly and keep a closer eye on the secretary himself. He calmly instructs Taeju to prepare a caregiver certificate for her, stunning Taeju, who wonders when his associate started caring about such things. As the associate turns to get it done, Taeju is left wondering if he was feeling sorry for her this whole time. A short while later, Yeonseul is in a state of shock, barely processing their out-of-the-blue request for her to become a caregiver. Taeju laughs and hands her a thick manual, claiming it contains all the details. As she flips through it, her expression turns to horror. The manual contains over 1,000 instructions, with absurdly specific rules like the patient only eating 3-day-old nabak kimchi and needing to be addressed from 3 meters away. Overwhelmed, she slams the book shut, and with a strained smile, declares that this is illegal and she absolutely refuses. She argues that she has no medical qualifications and can't be responsible if something happens to him, insisting that's precisely why she must say no. Taeju looks away guiltily, admitting they're asking a lot but stressing that she's the only one who knows their situation. The associate then steps in, formally apologizing for the abruptness of the request before laying out the job details. She'll work weekdays at the NS Tower Hotel suite for about 5 hours. Yeonseul is taken aback, surprised that he actually knows how to apologize. Later, as she walks away after agreeing, she thinks to herself that Taeju is really something, knowing just when to turn on the charm. She suddenly pauses, her steps halting as she overhears a conversation. Peeking back, she sees Taeju and the associate talking. Her blood runs cold as she hears the associate tell Taeju not to overcomplicate his relationship with her when he doesn't have to. A chill runs down Yeonseul's spine as the associate's words hit her, her mind racing to understand what he could possibly mean. The conversation continues, with the associate flatly telling Taeju to avoid her room if he can help it, triggering a flash of memory for Yeonseul of a time she pushed Taeju away, worried someone might see them. She slips back into her room unnoticed, her heart heavy as she tries to convince herself that she never intended to be clingy. She already knew on the island that she and Taeju had no future together. Placing a can of beer next to another she had intended to share with him, she scolds herself for being a fool, before flopping onto her bed in defeat. If he's been warned to stay away, there's nothing she can do. A frown mars her face as she tries to swallow her disappointment, deciding she might as well call her friend Yeonuk over to fill the empty space in the massive house. Meanwhile, Taeju is on the phone with his mother, smoothly denying that he has a girlfriend and clarifying that the girl his mother's secretary saw was just an employee. After ending the call, he complains to his associate that he can't catch a break, explaining that his mom's secretary saw him shopping with Yeonseul. A mischievous idea sparks in his eyes as he suggests simply telling his mother that he's dating Yeonseul. a suggestion that his associate Min-hyuk immediately and firmly rejects. He reminds Taeju that once the contract ends, Yeonseul will be a stranger, and he shouldn't complicate things unnecessarily. Taeju bristles at this, wondering if living overseas taught Min-hyuk to treat relationships so lightly. Min-hyuk, however, presses on, pointing out that Taeju hasn't considered the devastating rumors and attacks Yeonseul could face if news of a relationship with him broke out. The harsh reality of the situation finally dawns on Taeju, who stammers that he hadn't thought about that. Min-hyuk adds that her situation is already precarious enough without adding more trouble to her plate. A chastened Taeju apologizes, admitting his idea was thoughtless. Min-hyuk says nothing more, walking away with a heavy heart, realizing his earlier plan to go downstairs is now impossible. He quietly wonders why Yeonseul hasn't come to visit him, a pang of loneliness echoing in his thoughts as he wonders if she misses him at all. Some time later, Yeonseul arrives at the gleaming NS Tower to begin her new job. Secretary Im presents her with a surprisingly frilly made uniform, explaining that while it was prepared by the chairman's wife, she isn't required to wear it. In the hotel suite, which serves as a makeshift hospital room, Yeonseul, dressed in the uniform, introduces herself to Chairman Jang. The chairman, a man with a formidable presence, calmly acknowledges her and says he looks forward to her efforts. Yeonseul's heart thumps in her chest. She's completely struck by how uncannily similar he is to Taeju, from his appearance to his piercing gaze. When the chairman questions her attire, she flusteredly explains it was his wife's choice. The chairman's expression softens into one of deep regret as he murmurs that he pushed his son too hard, never dreaming things would end this way. Yeonseul watches him, feeling a wave of sympathy and hoping the father and son can find a way to reunite soon. Later, while taking a break in the employees' cafe, a man strikes up a conversation, correctly guessing she's new based on her newcomer's smoothie. He offers to buy her a better drink, his intentions a little too obvious, but quickly backs off in embarrassment when she clarifies she's part of the security team. As she watches him leave, she suddenly freezes. A handsome man in a security uniform stands before her, his expression severe. It's Taeju's brother, and he coldly informs her that he was certain he'd requested she refrain from leaving his father's side while on duty. Taeju's brother, who Yeonseul now recognizes as Min-hyuk, coldly repeats his assertion that he requested she stay by his father's side. Without another word, he grabs her hand and starts pulling her away, ignoring her frantic protests about being recognized. He drags her through the bustling cafe and into a private room, slamming her against the walls. He quickly apologizes for his roughness, before demanding to know what she's doing there. Taking off his hat, Min-hyuk reveals he's there to keep an eye on things. The scene flashes back to a conversation between Taeju and Min-hyuk, where Min-hyuk explains that he can't rest easy until he sees his father's condition for himself. He also mentions wanting to investigate the internal network between the tower and NS Group, believing that if he can find out who approached his father, he can also identify who ordered his own deaths, as they are likely the same people. Taeju then instructs Min-hyuk to organize an exclusive security team for the suite floor, to be overseen by Secretary Im. Min-hyuk believes that disguised as security, he can slip by unnoticed. Back in the present, Yeonseul's eyes sparkle with excitement as she realizes he's also undercover, just like in the movies. Min-hyuk, however, is all business, turning the question back on her and demanding to know why she was in the cafe. Yeonseul defensively insists she didn't abandon her post, explaining that Secretary Im had suggested she check out the employee cafe and that Min-hyuk himself had given her permission to roam freely. He finds her adorable reactions irresistible, wanting to tease her more, and pins her against the wall again. He leans in close, his voice a low whisper as he reminds her that she's on an undercover mission and should avoid crowded places. Flustered and blushing, he runs a hand through his hair before asking if she has anything to report. He grits his teeth, fighting an internal battle against his own desires. His mind flashes with a vivid, heated memory of a passionate encounter with her, and he blinks, snapping himself back to reality as Yeonseul calls out Taeju's name. She clears her throat, telling him that it's getting hard to ignore his resemblance to his brother. Min-hyuk, stunned, lunges back into a chair and abruptly changes the subject, asking about her getup. Yeonseul explains that she was told the lady of the house had it prepared for her. Min-hyuk smirks, revealing that his father is remarried and he has a very young brother, something not publicly known. After clarifying the uniform situation, he again asks if she has anything unusual to report. She hesitates before questioning if the chairman is really bedridden, as he appears to be in good health. Min-hyuk assures her it's not an act, as his father's health was declining even before his own disappearance, before warning her again to avoid public spaces while in uniform. She agrees vehemently, though she's utterly confused by his behavior. Just yesterday, he seemed to not care about her at all, and now he's taking her breath away again. She wonders if this is some new form of torture, completely unable to wrap her head around him as she trudges back to her post. As she enters the suite, a woman with a cool smile greets her, commenting on her presence. Yeonseul's heart plummets as she recognizes the woman. Yeonseul stammers out a greeting to the madam, who cheerfully replies that it's good to finally meet her darling. Realizing this must be Tiju's stepmother, Yeonseul forces a smile and apologizes for the late introduction. The woman, wearing a matching uniform, playfully twirls and asks how she looks, admitting she couldn't resist trying one on herself. She then giggles, saying that while the outfit is more fitting for a young thing like Yeonseul, she appreciates the flattery. A flicker of recognition crosses Yeonseul's face. She feels like she's seen this woman before. Suddenly it clicks, this is the famous actress Mihui Choi. Mihui remembers that President Dong-ho Jang, the chairman's younger brother, is coming for a meeting soon and decides she should change into something more appropriate. Yeonseul is stunned to learn she's being given a break so soon after clocking in, thinking to herself that this woman is a benevolent queen from the heavens. But the mention of company talk piques her interest. She feels she should try to listen in. Deciding to go for it, she nervously presses her ear against the door. But the walls are too thick to hear anything. Inside the room, Chairman Jang is furious, raging that they've not only postponed announcing Tiju's death, but are now delaying the annual shareholders meeting as well. His brother Dong-ho calmly explains that the board is adamant about holding off until the cause of death is determined. The chairman starts coughing and Mihui rushes to his side, but he waves her off, simply asking for water. He then tells his brother to focus on the upcoming meeting, surprising Dong-ho with his apparent composure. The chairman then instructs Secretary Im to arrange a meeting with Tiju's lawyer, as they can't leave his assets unattended any longer. Secretary Im steps forward, suggesting they handle Tiju's company shares first. Mihui interrupts, reminding them that she has yet to allocate any shares to her own young son, Taeyong. She argues that while Tiju was fond of the boy, making him the heir would not sit well with others. The chairman laughs, remarking that only she would turn down shares being handed to her. Having failed to eavesdrop, Yeonseul is startled when the door suddenly swings open. Mihui, now changed, asks what she's doing huddled on the floor, and then sweetly asks her to come over. She has a request. She needs Yeonseul to stay with her son, Taeyong, in the hotel lobby until his tutor arrives. Yeonseul, now incredibly stressed about meeting the child of a celebrity, waits anxiously in the designated spot. She recalls Tiju's cryptic words that she would know Taeyong when she saw him, wondering what he could have possibly meant. She turns, her eyes widening in disbelief at the sight before her. There, standing before her, is a young boy who is the spitting image of Tiju, the very epitome of a haughty young master. As he approaches, he greets her coolly, and the tutor standing beside him immediately introduces himself. The boy, Taeyong, then commands her not to get sidetracked and to only have eyes for him from now on, a statement so audacious it leaves Yeonseul speechless. She can't help but wonder if this insufferable audacity runs in the family, muttering to herself that one Tiju was more than enough. Taeyong, however, simply repeats his request for her to wait for him. With a strained smile, Yeonseul tells him she's afraid he doesn't have a choice. As they sit together, Taeyong condescendingly states that the poor have no choice, but that's not the case for him. The comment hits a nerve, and Yeonseul finds herself empathizing with the boy, realizing that he, like Tiju, was born into a world far different from most people's. With newfound determination, she stands up, takes his hand, and brightly suggests a trip to the arcade, leaving the young master blushing and momentarily speechless. They spend the next few hours having a blast playing games, eating spicy food, and riding a spinning attraction. As the day ends, Yeonseul feels utterly drained, reflecting that the past 3 hours were worse than any office party. Taeyong, however, is beaming, exclaiming that he had so much fun. When he asks if this was all new to her, she pauses and then explains that he had been curious about what normal 8-year-olds do, so she simply showed him. This revelation seems to touch the boy's tutor, who watches them with a gentle expression, while Yeonseul is just confused by his reaction. As they part ways, Taeyong hugs her tightly, making her promise to play with him again. Just as he leaves, a car pulls up and Yeonseul is surprised to see Minhyuk and Tiju inside. Minhyuk explains that he figured she'd be off work soon and decided to wait. As she gets in, her phone buzzes with a message from Taeyong, eagerly looking forward to their next hangout, which sends Tiju into a fit of laughter. He teases her about winning the boy over so completely, while an exhausted Yeonseul asks if she can take a sick day tomorrow. Tiju glances at her in the rearview mirror, a thoughtful expression on his face as he recalls all the unwanted attention she's received, from random men to the young master. Realizing that no one seems to just let her be, he remembers telling her she's probably the only one who doesn't know how pretty she is. The next day, Taeju drops her off at work. She slumps in her seat, complaining that the uniform drains all her energy. Taeju offers to get them coffee, but she insists on going herself. As he leaves, she feels a pang of exhaustion and yawns, wishing she had taken a sick day. Peeking out, she spots Mihui coming out of a residence that isn't the chairman's, her curiosity piqued. She then sees Mihui greet Dong-ho, the chairman's brother, with an intimate familiarity that sends a chill down her spine. She confirms it's him and reasons that it's natural for him to be close to his sister-in-law, yet she can't shake the feeling that she saw something she shouldn't have. A sudden memory flashes in her mind. Her friend Hyeji graduated with a degree in social welfare. A sly smirk appears on her face as she formulates a plan. The scene shifts to Yeonseul proposing an idea to Taeju and Minhyuk. Her friend Hyeji, who just returned to Korea, could take over as the caregiver. Taeju is hesitant, but Minhyuk presses him, asking why he's in such a rush to replace Yeonseul and if she seemed to be struggling. Minhyuk explains that it would be a headache if she were caught, and given how much she knows, she'd be in serious danger. He adds with a fiery intensity that he also refuses to see her in that maid uniform any longer. Yeonseul considers telling them what she saw between Mihui and Dong-ho but decides against it, thinking it's none of her business and that Minhyuk is just trying to push her away. She stands up to leave, but as she walks away, Taeju calls out, asking about the hacker he hired. Minhyuk reports that the hacker found no signs of security contacting external forces, though some regularly report to Dong-ho, which he dismisses as normal concern for his brother. Taeju reflects that while the situation has revealed enemies, it's also shown him who has his back. He thinks back to when his friend found out he was alive, a rare smile gracing his lips as he murmurs his appreciation. Back in her room, Yeonseul is happily trying on a new wardrobe sent by Mihui. When a call from Taeju interrupts her personal fashion show, he sounds flustered, asking if she's familiar with catching roaches. As she teases him, asking if he's afraid of them. He denies it, claiming he's just disgusted, and she triumphantly declares that a meager bug doesn't faze a girl from a rough part of town like her. When she arrives at his room, she finds him pointing at where he last saw the roach. As she leaps to catch it, she accidentally sprays him with the shower head. He chides her for being careless as he hands her a towel, and she calls his name, her expression soft. He chuckles and pulls her into an embrace, his heart pounding in his chest. As he leans in, she jolts, her mind racing. After he was so cold earlier, she wonders if he's just taking advantage of the fact that she likes him. He pulls away with a sigh and covers his face, completely flustered. The next day, Yeonseul's replacement, Hyeji, arrives. Yeonseul warns her that she's in for a surprise. Moments later, Taeyang appears, demanding to know where she was. Before tackling her in a hug, Yeonseul introduces Hyeji as the new caregiver, but Taeyang rejects her, insisting he doesn't need a new one. Hyeji, unfazed, expertly handles the situation, explaining labor laws to the boy in a way he can understand. Yeonseul whispers that Taeyang is the chairman's youngest son, but Hyeji confidently assures her that a few days with her, and he won't be the same. Just then, Yeonseul gets a call from her friend Yeonuk, who wants to meet up at a local bathhouse. Remembering Taeju's warning about Minhyuk never coming to the first floor, she decides it would be okay to have her friend over for one night, and happily tells him she can't wait to see him. Later that night, Yeonuk arrives, marveling at the house. They catch up over a meal and he asks how her female boss is treating her, forcing Yeonseul to lie to keep him from worrying. As Yeonuk steps out for a smoke, she starts cleaning up. She's surprised when he returns so quickly and turns to greet him, only to freeze in horror. It's not Yeonuk who has returned, it's Minhyuk, and his expression is thunderous. He grits his teeth, his voice dangerously low as he asks if she really thought she could have a man over just because he doesn't come downstairs often. Taeju walks with a cake box, his mind replaying the awkward silence that has existed between him and Yeonseul ever since she last left. He lets out a heavy sigh, consumed by worry, but his concern quickly morphs into suspicion when he arrives at her apartment and spots a second pair of men's slippers at the entrance. Peeking inside, his eyes land on a sight that makes his blood run cold. A pair of men's briefs hanging on a drying rack. His face hardens into a mask of pure fury. Just then Yeonseul appears, nervously asking why he's back so soon. Taeju says nothing, his cold glare doing all the talking. He rips the briefs from the rack and dangles them in front of her, demanding an explanation. Before she can answer, a young man named Yeonuk rushes to her side, protectively asking if she's okay. Taeju freezes, wondering who this newcomer is. Before a cruel smirk spreads across his face, he sneers that these briefs must belong to this bastard and contemptuously tosses them at him. Yeonuk explodes in anger, calling Taeju a geezer and demanding to know who he is to barge into someone's house and throw his boxers, accusing him of being a stalker. Yeonseul tries to defuse the situation, but Taeju's rage boils over when he sees her grab Yeonuk's arm. He violently shoves Yeonuk away from her, roaring that this is his house, so he should be the one asking questions. The revelation stuns Yeonuk, who turns to Yeonseul and asks why she told him her boss was a woman. The pieces click into place for Taeju, who lets out a dark, humorless laugh, realizing she lied about his gender to reassure her boyfriend. He tells her he is beyond speechless and that this deception is more than enough grounds for her to be fired. While Yeonuk panics that he got his sister fired, Yeonseul seethes internally, furious that Taeju jumped to such a damning conclusion, feeling that being fired for having her own brother over is deeply unfair. With her resolve hardening, Yeonseul offers a stiff apology for having a guest without permission, but then her voice turns to ice as she tells Taeju they are done here and will be leaving immediately. She grabs her brother's hand and walks out, leaving a stunned and bewildered Taeju in her wake. Later, the siblings sit in a public bathhouse eating ramen. Yeonuk apologizes for getting her fired, but Yeonseul dismisses it, claiming her boss had anger issues and was wrong to make assumptions. A memory surfaces of a man warning Taeju not to get attached, as Yeonseul would be a stranger once their contract ended. Trying to convince herself, Yeonseul thinks that ending the contract early was for the best, though she admits bringing her brother into the house was her mistake. She sighs, lamenting that she and Taeju couldn't even make it 100 days together. A few days later, Yeonuk brings exciting news. His new client has offered him a live-in position and said Yeonseul could stay too. Believing this is a fresh start, Yeonseul declares that she and Taeju are truly over now. They're picked up in a luxurious car, and after a brief, nervous exchange, they both drift off to sleep. When the driver announces their arrival, Yeonseul gets out only to freeze in utter shock. It's his house. She stares in disbelief as the door opens, revealing Minhyun, who greets her by name, with Taeju standing grimly behind him. The horrifying truth crashes down on her. This is her brother's new workplace. Inside, Yeonuk innocently asks his new boss, Minhyun, how he knows his sister. The dread builds in Yeonseul as she realizes that if Minhyun is here, then Taeju must be too. She frantically whispers for Yeonuk to find another job, but her brother is completely lost until Taeju steps forward. Yeonuk finally recognizes him as the man who threw his boxers. Taeju then does the unexpected. He stands and offers a sincere apology for his behavior, admitting he completely misjudged the situation. While Yeonseul remains silently furious, Yeonuk suddenly has a shocking realization, pointing at Taeju and asking if he's the Taeju Jang from NS Group, the man who was reported dead. Taeju retorts that it's Mr. Jang to him, dryly noting the siblings' shared lack of manners. Later, as they wash dishes, Yeonuk presses Yeonseul for details about her time on the island with Taeju. She brushes it off as a simple misunderstanding, but Yeonuk isn't convinced, asking why Taeju looked so hurt when she downplayed their connection. The memory of Taeju's pained expression flashes in her mind. Yeonuk points out the obvious. If something truly romantic had happened on the island, they would be dating now, not in this awkward employer-employee relationship. Yeonseul falls silent, knowing he's right. As she drifts off to sleep, she's startled awake to find Taeju sitting beside her bed. He confesses his regret, admitting that ever since he saw her arrive, all he could think was that he couldn't lose her again. He tells her his pride and jealousy got the best of him, and he's about to confess his feelings when she softly asks if they can go back to how things were on the island. He agrees. Emboldened, she asks if she can stay with him tonight, and begins to undress, taking control as she kisses him passionately. She pushes him onto the couch, whispering that they'll do things her way. But the fantasy shatters when she's woken by her own voice calling him Mr. Jang. She's standing over him with a lint roller, asking why he's sleeping on the couch. It was all a dream. Taeju is crushed, wondering if their intimate moment was just a figment of his imagination. He collapses back onto the couch, feeling like a hormonal teenager. Frustrated that even after everything, he still hasn't been able to say the three most important words. After a seemingly tranquil day begins, a memory of being called a liar flashes through someone's mind. Back in the present, Yeonseul finds herself being teased by Minhyun and another man named Yeonuk. Minhyun points out that Taeju is their boss, but Yeonseul retorts that Taeju seems to go out of his way to hate her. Minhyun counters this, revealing that Taeju had prepared a meal specifically for her, something he had never even done for him. Hearing that Yeonuk is a gym enthusiast with his own home gym, Yeonseul decides to bring him a protein shake. As she approaches, she peeks inside the gym door and is stunned to find Taeju working out shirtless, his muscular body glistening with sweat. The sight sends her mind reeling, complaining internally that he's being extra when he knows others are in the house. And she swallows hard, her imagination running wild with a fantasy of fishing on a beach. In her daydream, she feels something touch her from behind, thinking it's a giant fish she's about to catch. But it turns out to be a shirtless Taeju. She complains that she thought he was a fish, and he smirks, offering to make it up to her by whispering that he's been thinking about her all day. Snapping back to reality, Yeonseul shakes her head, mortified by her own thoughts. Just then, Taeju finishes his workout and appears before her, asking how long she's been standing there. Flustered, she quickly presents the supplements, explaining they are for muscle recovery. But before she can give them to Yeonuk, Taeju intercepts the bottle and chugs it down himself. He then asks if she ate the food he prepared, and when she confirms she did, a hint of a smile plays on his lips. Yeonseul's heart leaps, thrilled that the meal really was for her. Yeonuk complains that the drink was meant for him, but Yeonseul brushes it off as simple courtesy to their boss and makes a hasty retreat. Later, Taeju, Minhyun, and Yeonuk gather for a serious meeting about hacking a crypto exchange with servers based in America. Yeonuk explains that the security is too strong for a remote attack and volunteers to go undercover, a suggestion Taeju immediately rejects as too dangerous. Yeonuk insists, confident he can infiltrate the company with a fake identity, and Taeju reveals their target is one of their own subsidiaries located on Jeju Island, ordering Minhyun to accompany him. Taeju is visibly uneasy about the plan and instructs them to tell his sister, Yeonseul, that it's just a normal business trip. Taeju refuses to lie to her, but their argument is cut short when Yeonseul herself appears, asking where they are going. Startled, Yeonuk quickly explains he has a short trip to Jeju Island. Yeonseul immediately realizes this means she will be left alone in the house with Taeju. And when Minhyun reveals they'll be gone for over a week, she can barely contain her inner scream of delight. That night, Taeju drinks alone, troubled by the situation and his own complicated feelings for Yeonseul. She finds him and nervously asks why he's drinking by himself. He invites her to sit with him for a talk, but the air is thick with awkwardness. In a moment of panic, Yeonseul grabs a shot of 80-proof liquor and downs it, immediately choking on the strong alcohol. Taeju rushes to her side, patting her back and chiding her for being so reckless. Overwhelmed, Yeonseul asks why he's always so hot and cold with her mind filled with flashbacks of his harsh words. She downs another shot and drunkenly slurs that nothing ever goes her way before passing out in his arms. Taeju carries her to her room, sighing that nothing seems to go his way either. As he's about to leave, Yeonseul begins to talk in her sleep, revealing she overheard him telling someone that she'd be a stranger once her contract was over. Taeju realizes she misunderstood a completely different conversation, but she continues, accusing him of hating her. A soft chuckle escapes his lips, and he leans close, telling her that if she's going to pretend to be asleep, he'll have to up the ante, because just owning her body isn't enough for him anymore. He teases her for being corny, before gently kissing her forehead, and then her lips, as she giggles in her sleep, and he gazes at her, thinking how long it's been since he saw her laugh so freely. He apologizes for the misunderstanding and leaves her room with a knowing smirk. The next morning, Yeonseul wakes up with a throbbing head and confusing flashbacks of the previous night, including a vivid memory of asking Taeju to hug her. Horrified, she convinces herself it must have been a dream and marches out to confront him and find out the truths. She finds him in the library, but her courage fails her and she pretends to be tidying up. He chuckles, noting that he expected she wouldn't remember a thing. Seizing the opportunity, Yeonseul pretends to have blacked out entirely, hoping to trick him into revealing what happened. She presses him, asking if anything occurred after he carried her to her room. Her heart pounds in anticipation. Taeju's expression shifts as he confirms that something definitely did happen. He leans in close, reminding her that he confessed he was going to win her heart, and now he wants to know how she feels. Yeonseul is left speechless, her mind reeling until she suddenly remembers Yeonuk's trip. Rushing outside, she finds Yeonuk and Minhyun preparing to leave, with Yeonuk comically insisting on being called by his undercover name, Gabriel Jang. After a worried farewell, Taeju steps in front of her, stopping her from going back inside. He glares, reminding her she has an exam to study for, his possessiveness flaring up as the car disappears. Yeonseul awkwardly tries to excuse herself to go study, but Taeju grabs her hand, pulling her back. He holds her gaze, asking if studying is really more important than being with him. Taeju's frustrated question hangs in the air, is studying more important than him? The query sends Yeonseul into a flustered panic as she stammers that she isn't emotionally ready for something. Misunderstanding her meltdown entirely, Taeju gently clarifies that he only meant she didn't need to push herself so hard with her studies, leaving Yeonseul mortified by her own overreaction. The awkward moment is broken when he asks if she's hungry, and she realizes their dinner never arrived. He explains that with Minhyun away on business, the house is technically unoccupied on paper, so no meal services will be delivered for a while. Yeonseul offers to prepare something, but Taeju has a better idea. They should eat outside instead. He leads her to the rooftop, a place she hadn't seen yet, suggesting a barbecue. Her eyes light up at the thought of stargazing, her earlier embarrassment forgotten. As Taeju grills their meal under the evening sky, Yeonseul remarks that this feels like a modern, 21st century version of their time on Temation Island. Taeju teases her, asking if she's implying they were living in the Stone Ages back then, to which she retorts that with all the fishing they did, they practically were. He slyly reminds her that she shot down his offer to catch birds, a point she vehemently dismisses as totally different. She wonders aloud if they would have died if the rainy season had hit, but Taeju confidently states they definitely would not have. Intrigued, Yeonseul presses him for the reason, guessing at a hidden bunker on the island. Instead of answering, he pours her a glass of wine, then compliments her, saying he believes she would have survived just fine even if she were stranded all alone. He chuckles, reminding her of her own resourcefulness with a flashback to her digging determinedly on the beach, assuring her it was a compliment when she gets flustered. He then claims he showered her with plenty of compliments on the island, a statement that completely baffles Yeonseul. She racks her brain, but the only compliments she can recall are his heated, suggestive whispers during their most intimate moments. The memory sends a deep blush crawling up her neck, but Taeju breaks her reverie by clarifying he was talking about the time he wrongly accused her of being a spy. The mood shifts as Yeonseul remembers the painful accusation, but she quickly laughs it off, admitting she couldn't help but fight back when he got so angry. Taeju sighs, genuinely apologetic, confessing he regrets his reaction and that he was just seeing red. She comforts him, insisting that it's okay, prompting him to ask hopefully if she truly forgives him. She playfully brushes it off, saying there's nothing to forgive, and tells him he should stop being mad at her too. Her attention is then caught by the rooftop jacuzzi, and she excitedly mentions she still has the bikini from the island. The words leave her mouth before she can process the implication, and she immediately begins to panic internally, realizing he might want to go in together. She reasons that it is his house, after all, but her thoughts are cut short when Taeju smirks and asks outright if they should get in together. A little while later, wrapped in a robe, Yeonseul hesitates outside the jacuzzi room, her heart pounding. She tries to psych herself up, telling herself it's no big deal as long as she stays in control. Taking a deep breath, she enters to find Taeju already submerged in the bubbling water, beckoning her to come in. As she slips into the water, the atmosphere thick with tension. Taeju asks if the temperature is all right, and she quietly confirms it is. Though internally she's screaming that the water temperature is the last thing on her mind. She feels like she's the only one worked up, annoyed by his apparent indifference when they are so exposed to one another. Suddenly, Taeju sighs that it's getting hot, and she glances over to see his face is completely flushed. He blames it on the warm water and the wine, before adding softly that it's also because he can finally relax now that they've cleared the. His sincere words make her swoon, and she has to scold her own racing heart. Leaning back, Taeju looks up at the sky, noting that it's full of stars just like it was on the island. Yeonseul follows his gaze, agreeing that it's a beautiful reminder. The memory of them splashing playfully in the ocean under a similar sky flashes through her mind. It's different, he says, because she is with him, Yeonseul. It's different, he says, because she is with him, Yeonseul. Her heart skips a beat. He gently takes her hand, reminding her that she wanted to know how he felt. Without another word, he leans in and kisses her with a depth that takes her breath away. When they finally part, he whispers a challenge, wondering if she missed him more than he missed her. She smiles coyly, replying, "Who knows?" before initiating another passionate kiss. As things heat up, he tugs at her bikini strap, murmuring that her winning is impossible, declaring that she surely knows how to rile him up. The tender moment escalates, until Taeju suddenly gets out of the jacuzzi. When she asks where he's going, he simply says, "My room," before scooping her up into his arms and carrying her out with him. Grinning that she knows what's next, he lays her down gently on the beds, but just as he leans over her, the mood is shattered by the buzzing of her phone. A call from Yeonuk flashes on the screen, and Taeju's expression instantly darkens with pure annoyance at his terrible timing. The romantic atmosphere evaporates as he glares at the phone, furious at the interruption from Yeonuk that little. He reaches over, suggesting she check it later, but then relents with a sigh, telling her to just answer it if she's that worried. Yeonseul scrambles out of the bedroom and into the living room, thinking herself insane to even consider taking the call in Taeju's room while in a bathrobe. She answers to find her brother excitedly rambling about the amazing hotel he and Minhyun are staying at. While Yeonseul patiently listens, back at the hotel, Yeonuk is trembling with anxiety, trying to convince himself there's no way his sister is with Taeju, even as the image of her in a bathrobe torments him. Minhyun steps in, confirming that he knows all about their relationship and has been watching them dance around each other for a while. He reassures a worried Yeonuk that Taeju is completely serious about his sister, adding that anyone can see they're clearly into each other. and that Taeju is just as hopelessly smitten. The next morning, an awkward silence hangs between Taeju and Yeonseul as she cleans the floor. Taeju internally fumes that Yeonuk called just to brag, while Yeonseul hides a smile at the ridiculousness of it all. Finally, Taeju tells her to stop cleaning and study near him instead. When she asks why, he admits he just feels like watching her. Though confused, Yeonseul complies, catching a glimpse of her own giddy reflection on the way. After applying some lip balm, she sits down and the two pretend to work, neither able to focus for a second. Yeonseul can feel his gaze on her, making it impossible to concentrate on her lecture. Taeju finally breaks the silence with a chuckle. As Yeonseul finishes and stretches, he suddenly asks what's on her lips. Flustered, she mumbles that it's just lip balm. In one smooth motion, Taeju leans across the table and captures her mouth in a soft kiss. He pulls back, leaving her utterly stunned, her heart pounding as she wonders why his impulsive act felt so incredibly natural. Across from her, Taeju is equally flustered, realizing he had moved completely without thinking. Yeonseul sits beside Taeju on the couch, watching a drama, but her mind is elsewhere, thinking him a complete dummy for being so clueless about her feelings. Taeju breaks the silence, complaining about the sappy show, but Yeonseul defends it as a way to relax, telling him that if he's going to stay, he should at least try to appreciate the emotional roller coaster with her. As if on cue, a character on screen demands to know the truth about their relationship, asking the one question that hangs unspoken between them: what are we exactly? The words jolt them both, the awkwardness palpable as they reflect on their own situation. Despite having been glued to each other for days, the question creates an instant rift, and they both turn away, a blush creeping up Taeju's neck. A montage of their recent life flashes through Yeonseul's mind. Long days spent working side by side, surrounded by towering stacks of paper. She recalls him pointing out a workbook he'd given her, and her quiet thanks, her thoughts jumbling as she remembers the intense physical connection they shared, a time when things felt so much more straightforward. Her memories drift back to the moment the work began, when Taeju asked if she planned to study accounting after she mentioned enjoying it at a previous job. Seizing the opportunity, he slammed down mountains of paperwork, revealing the true reason he needed her: to digitize 15 years of handwritten ledgers from the NS Welfare Foundation and an orphanage. He declared his plan to run the numbers, find every discrepancy, and hunt down all the hidden funds. Yeonseul remembers glaring at the impossible task, but when he pleaded for her help, she steeled her resolve, reminding herself that he was the boss and she was on his payroll. An intense work marathon followed, with the two of them typing away day and night, their only respite being brief, exhausted breaks on the couch late at night. She recalls mumbling enormous numbers under her breath, 100 million feeling like nothing after days of staring at billions. When the monumental task was finally finished, Taeju marveled that they'd actually done it, thanking her for her hard work. He offered her a massage to ease her exhaustion, and she eagerly accepted, her heart pounding as he leaned in with an intense gaze. Waiting for him on the sofa, Yeonseul grows drowsy, wondering about his intentions, and chiding herself for accepting his offer so quickly. She admits to herself that no matter how many times she's tried to stop, she just keeps falling for him harder and harder. Taeju finally appears in the doorway, reminding her of their conversation on the rooftop when she said she missed the old him from the island. As she nods nervously, he tells her he's been thinking about it, and her eyes instantly well up with tears, her mind jumping to the worst conclusion. He becomes flustered, trying to explain that he doesn't think they should continue this way, but his words only confirm her fears as she tearfully thinks he just dumped her. Sitting together inside, he tries to elaborate, but she's already checked out, sarcastically asking if her special memories were supposed to be of her digging in the dirt all day. He quickly says that's not it, explaining that simply going back to how things were on the island isn't enough for him. He confirms his feelings for her are the same as they were back then, and that's precisely why he doesn't want to go back. He wants something more. Yeonseul is left stunned and blushing as he pulls her into a deep embrace, whispering her name before capturing her lips in a passionate kiss. The kiss deepens as he lifts her onto his lap, their night dissolving into a blur of intimacy. The next morning, however, Yeonseul wakes up in an empty bed. She wanders out into the living area, her confusion turning to dread when she sees his desk is completely, unnervingly clean. A chilling memory surfaces of Taeju saying he didn't want to leave a single trace he was there. The horrifying realization dawns on her: he cleaned everything because he's gone. In a panic, she runs through the house, confirming her fears when she finds his closet empty. She collapses, sobbing his name and asking why he would leave, her cries echoing in the silent house. Wiping her tears, she desperately tries to rationalize his departure, deciding to call him when the doorbell suddenly rings. A jolt of fear runs through her. Taeju wouldn't ring, and no one else knows this address. She cautiously approaches the intercom and is shocked to see Secretary Lim Tae-ju's father on the screen. Forcing a smile, she greets him, only for him to explain that he hasn't been able to contact his son for days. Inside, he expresses his surprise at finding her there, muttering about how it's unlike his son to disappear before a sudden look of understanding crosses his face. To Yeonseul's horror, he's concluded she's in a secret relationship with his son, but he mistakenly believes it's Minhyun, not Tae-ju. He remarks that his younger son, Minhyun, has always shown little interest in business. Yeonseul presses, asking if that leniency applies to everyone, her voice laced with bitterness. Secretary Lim's expression grows grim as he confirms that his eldest son, Tae-ju, lived his entire life under immense pressure as the heir. After Secretary Lim departs, Yeonseul steps outside, only to be grabbed from behind by Tae-ju himself. He explains he saw his father's car on the CCTV and hid in the garage, then burst out laughing as he tells her his father now suspects she's Minhyun's secret mistress. Meanwhile, at the class hotel, Minhyun feels his ear tingling, wondering if someone is talking about him. He greets a sharp-looking young man named Mr. Jang, a brilliant IT expert whom he congratulates on getting a job. As Minhyun welcomes him, Mr. Jang smirks to himself, musing that his return might not be good news for Tae-ju and Yeonseul. The final scene flashes back through Minhyun's memories of his sister's denseness, a young Tae-ju questioning who gave her a basket of candy, or a new smartwatch, always looking suspicious of her oblivious explanations. Minhyun smiles, thinking how his sister has always been hopelessly dense about romance, especially when it came to Tae-ju, who pursued her relentlessly even in broad daylight.